this presentation, we're going to talk about preventing violence in the workplace. The goal of this presentation is to have you learn about workplace violence, including how to prevent it, intervention, and then our response to any workplace violence incidents that we have. You're going to learn to define what workplace violence is. We're going to talk about the OSHA Act of 1970. We're going to talk about the primary elements of workplace violence in our prevention program and policy. We'll talk about characteristics of an employee disenchantment, and then we'll review the policy. So it is estimated that nearly 25% of all workplace violence goes unreported, and that comes from the Business Health Services. Um, that's because little disagreements may happen between employees and they don't bring it up to the supervisor, either not wanting to get someone in trouble or maybe the issue is passed. But that's quite a large percentage of workplace violence incidents that doesn't get reported. The definition of workplace violence is any act against an employee that creates a hostile work environment and negatively affects the employee either physically or psychologically. And that's from the National Crime Prevention Council. So some examples might be if a employee is saying inappropriate words to you, or threats, or physically puts their hands on you in either a positive or negative way, those things would constitute workplace violence. Having a disagreement with your supervisor over what you're told to do is not workplace violence. Um, so there are four types of workplace violence. A person that commits workplace violence, they could fall into any one of these categories. They could either have no relationship to the workplace at all. They could be the recipient of a service or a customer. They could have an employment relationship either currently or previously, or they could have a personal relationship with a current or former employee. Um, there's a large financial impact from workplace violence incidents. Each year, almost 1 million individuals become the victims of violent crime while working. That's primarily in retail stores, hospitals, factories, and utility workers. Um, of those, about 500,000 victims of violent crime in the workplace lose 1.8 million workdays each year, and that totals up to about $36 billion in average cost for workplace violence. So there's a financial incentive for us preventing this, but also a cultural incentive. We don't want anyone to come to work and feel uncomfortable unnecessarily because of the inappropriate actions of someone else. So our commitment towards you guys is to have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to workplace violence. We'll talk about that more here in a minute. We're going to allocate sufficient resources when an incident does occur. We develop a system of accountability between the managers, the people involved. We track trends and train on security measures, and then we conduct training for awareness, which is what we're doing right now. So our zero tolerance policy is just this. Violation of our violence in the workplace policy may result in disciplinary action up to and including termination from employment. Additionally, violations of this policy will also be reported to the appropriate authorities when warranted, and therefore may be subject to civil and or criminal charges or penalties. So my best advice to everybody, if you are not having a good day, it is better that you walk away from an incident rather than get heated and lose your temper. If you put your hands on someone, regardless if you hurt them or not, if you put your hands on someone, that is automatic termination, and likely we will be calling the police. It's not something that we want to do. It's just the history of what has happened. If someone is at work and you're someone who likes to joke around, you can't assume that everybody's going to appreciate your sense of humor. We've had incidents arise sometimes off of someone making a poorly placed joke to someone who wasn't in the mood for it. So just be aware of those sort of things. We're here to work, feed our families, go home safely. So keep that in mind. so we can keep a comfortable environment for everybody. So there's some factors that lead to workplace violence that we like to look for. The first one would be employee disenchantment, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. Chronic absenteeism can be a sign that there might be an issue going on either at work or at home. Um, Lots of turnover. There are three levels of violence that we notice, and then aggressive behavior. So, employee disenchantment is just another term for a disgruntled employee. This person may not be happy with his or her supervisor or with the job itself, or they may be unhappy because of personal circumstances that have carried over to the workplace. A person who is disenchanted in the workplace could show a propensity towards workplace violence. So, anyone who's disgruntled is probably more likely to get involved in a workplace violence incident than someone who's not. It can result from confusion, lack of trust, office politics, feeling like you have a meaningless job, not knowing if he or she is succeeding in their job performance, or a boss taking credit for the employee's work. Um, so, some reasons that we could have some chronic absenteeism would be conflict with management styles. Someone might not like the working conditions, employee relationships with one another, personal issues. 75% of all absenteeism is relationship based. There are three levels of violence. So it would kind of start off with behavior like these following examples: like refusing to cooperate with your supervisor, spreading rumors and gossip, consistently arguing with coworkers or management, being belligerent towards customers, swearing at other people, or making unwanted sexual comments. The second level, um, the employee refuses to obey company policy. They might be sabotaging equipment or stealing property, verbalizing wishes to hurt coworkers or management, writing sexually violent notes, and they might see themselves as victimized by management. Um, and then the third level is the employee has suicidal thoughts, gets into physical fights on the job, uses weapons, commits acts of violence and crime. So we want to stop things back at level 1, not before they get to level 3. So some examples of aggressive behavior would be fear, intimidation, capitulation, punishment, alarm, emotional distress, anger. Um, Examples could be harassment, and that can come in the form of telephone, written, face to face. So if you call and leave an angry voicemail on an employee's phone, even if you're not on the work site, that still counts as harassment for our workplace violence policy. Stalking another employee, making any kind of threats, inappropriate communications, trespassing, or returning to the workplace after being told to leave. So sometimes what will happen is we have two employees disagreeing. It's maybe they get a little heated, things are getting a little loud. Generally, we will intervene and have and send both parties home. When we do that, we turn off your badge, so you're not allowed to re-access this area until everything is cooled off, and we can sit down and have a talk about what happened. If you return to the site after we have sent you away for any reason, it is grounds for immediate termination. This unfortunately happened to an employee several years ago, where we had sent them home for a disagreement. It actually was not that big of a deal. Something cooler heads could have prevailed and probably would have been fine, except for he went to the front desk, got a guest badge, and came back in the plant to pick up his phone. Do not do that. If we send you home and you left something in the plant, let Kenny or myself know, and we will retrieve that item for you and tell you where you can pick it up. But we do not want you to return to the site after we've asked you to leave. Some more examples could be occupying or entering a victim's dwelling or vehicle, falsely impersonating with an intent to harass. So, if you sign something with someone else's name that's purposefully wrong, like the wrong information on a form, that would fall under that workplace violence. Or making unwanted purchases in the victim's name. I always think of, ordering a bunch of pizzas to someone's house when I think of that. So those would be the examples. So, how do we handle a potentially violent situation? Um, First of all, you want to report any physical or verbal threats. No matter how big or small you think they are, you should report them. We never want you to touch the violent person. We want you to use a calm, non confrontational approach. Take all threats seriously and report to your supervisor. Familiarize yourself with the resources available and then seek immediate assistance if the situation escalates. Um, so, like I said, you can talk to somebody in a calm, non-confrontational manner. Say, "Hey, man, let's just calm down. Let's walk over here." Try to separate the two parties, but not physically touch anybody. But we don't want to make one bad incident two. So, um, and you don't have to get involved at all. Actually, if you just report it to supervision, so we can get involved. Um, 911 will be called as warranted. Uh, if you're the person calling 911, you want to make sure you use a phone that is out of sight and hearing of the violent person. Um, you don't want to call the police right in front of them because that might escalate the situation. If you can, stay on the line until the police arrive. Do not intervene physically and get yourself and others to a safe place as soon as possible. Um, we'll define stalking real quick. So there are two broad categories of stalking, either unwanted pursuit by a stranger or unwanted pursuit by someone the victim knows. Um, there's some signs of possible victimization, either at home or happening at the workplace. Either one of those, we look out for these signs. And that could be frequent or unplanned leave, a sudden change in job performance, unexplained bruises or injuries, sudden change of address, depression, eating disorders, self neglect, panic attacks, anxiety, and drug and alcohol dependence. Um, so, our reaction and support to workplace violence incidents. First of all, we confirm that the threat exists. We go and do an investigation um, and talk to everybody involved to get the story. We foster a supportive workplace climate, meaning um, if there's an incident between two employees, uh, we either resolve it or, and sometimes that resolution is one of those employees is terminated or both, or sometimes it's just, maybe these two people should not work together. We thoughtfully encourage coworker disclosure. Um, so we ask people to tell us when there's an issue, but if we can, for all intents and purposes, we keep things private, um, unless there's a violence incident that we need to communicate with that person about. And then we conduct staff training on how to handle workplace violence incidents. Um, we also evaluate any threats. We create an intervention plan. We notify and involve law enforcement, and we keep in close contact with the victim. So, if you're involved in an incident like this, you'll hear from us frequently over the next several days to make sure that um, we resolve, the resolution that we have in place, that you're aware of it, um, and that we've had an adequate response to what the situation is. We also will make referrals. We have a support line that can offer counseling services and all sorts of things like that. We learn whether court orders have been obtained, allow time off for the victim, review and modify workspaces. We're mindful of privacy, and like I said, we only notify other employees as it's absolutely appropriate. So, some safety tips to avoid workplace violence incidents is to keep your purse, wallet, keys, or other valuables with you at all times or locked in a drawer or closet. This is really important because you work with people every day, um, but we have had an incident arise where someone thought someone else stole their wallet that was left in a break room, and it resulted in a fight between two employees. Um, both of which ended up losing their jobs. So, my advice to you is to never leave anything that you care about out in the locker room, break room, bathroom. Um, if anything, put it in your car or keep it on your person or locked in your locker. Um, we want to check the identity of any strangers who are in your office. So if there's a random person just wandering around, that's something you want to report to your supervisor. Um, this next one doesn't really apply to us because we work 24 hours. But if you see any broken or flickering lights in the parking lot or dimly lit areas, broken windows, you want to avoid those and report them so we can get those things fixed. If you notice any signs of potential violence in a fellow employee, you want to report this to supervision immediately. Immediately report any incidents of sexual harassment to your supervisor or human resources department. If the company, we do have emergency supplies and we actually do have a nurse on site as well if we do have an incident. Avoid using out of the way corridors, stairwells when you're alone. So we do have some physical security barriers as well. We have property border fence lines, a well-lit parking lot, a badge entry system, a video camera systems. There's video cameras placed all throughout the plant that we have used to determine the truth of different workplace violence situations. There's an alarm system and then limited lobby access, meaning you're not able to access anything but the lobby from that front door. Um, just to go over a few things with workplace violence to clarify it. Um, like I said, if you put your hands on another employee, you will be terminated. No ifs, ands, or buts. If you make violent threats towards another employee saying, I'm going to beat you up, or I'm going to have someone come up here and beat you up, anything like that, that's not something that's going to be tolerated at our site, and you will also be terminated for that. It's not something that we want to do. We want to have a peaceful, pleasant workplace for everybody involved. So if you're feeling upset about something, my suggestion would be to walk away and come talk to a supervisor about what is making you upset. We can have conversations all day long. We can bring in the other party. We can come up with other solutions. However, once you cross that line into workplace violence, the only solution that I have at that point is to terminate you. To give a couple examples, we had the fight that I described. Um, we had another incident where a supervisor had asked an employee multiple times to remain on the floor and he kept disappearing. Um, so when he came back, the supervisor asked him to go home, to which the employee then exploded and put his hands on the supervisor, and the supervisor backed away. The result of that situation was that the employee who put his hands on the supervisor was terminated. Um, we've had incidents where there was one incident where we had an employee who uh, was making a joke to somebody who was having a bad day. Um, and the person that was having a bad day slapped the person that made a joke. Um, and this happened in front of a supervisor who did not report it to Kenny and myself. Um, so what happened to each of those parties is the person who put his hands slapped the other person. He was terminated. The person who made the joke that was inappropriate was suspended for a couple weeks. And then the supervisor who did not report it was demoted permanently. Um, so if you see something and you don't report it, it can also result in a disciplinary action for you too. So we want to know about these things because we want everybody to be comfortable. Um, right. So, like I said, if you're having any issues with anybody, we're always available to talk. We want to avoid these kind of problems. 99% of the time, there's no issues. Things run very smoothly. Don't let that moment of anger let you miss out on a good opportunity with us over at Celanese. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, please let me know. And otherwise, we have a test for this presentation. Thank you.